The root causes of terrorism is terrorists. That's how we respond.
Really? That's
yes.
it? The root cause is terror? Okay.
Yes, the root cause
You're
of
saying
terrorism.
that's it? You have no other.
Is terrorists.
This is it. The root cause of terrorism is terrorism. That's it?
Right.
There's no other cause?
The root cause of terrorism is terrorists.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Case closed. The root cause of terrorism is terrorists. This is according to Pierre Poilievre, and the funny thing is he's actually correct, but the one thing I think he may be off about is who these terrorists actually are. So today we're going to take a look at the Federal Bureau of Investigation and what they have been up to lately. And no, I am not talking about the FBI searching Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida. Viewers of this channel may have noticed I have not covered this story at all until right now, to point out the fact that this is a huge distraction. In fact, this may even be worse than a distraction because it plays into the illusion that Donald Trump is fighting the deep state, or that the deep state is somehow concerned about Donald Trump running again in 2024. No, folks, this is a false left-right paradigm that we are falling into, and this FBI search on Mar-a-Lago is just playing into that nonsense in the lead up to 2024. So no, we're not going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about some of the other things the FBI has been involved in over the years and what they're up to today. Now, if you go do a search on my website for foiled terror plot, you're going to get pages and pages of results. Stuff like this: victim in foiled terror plot Strathroy bombing sues the RCMP. Or what you're not being told about the new trial for the Via Rail foiled terror plot. Or the Strathroy bomber, another foiled terror plot. Or Canadian foiled terror plot in the intelligence community. Or this one, the truth about right-wing extremism and the coming new wave of global terrorism. Of course, I covered the proof that CSIS and the RCMP are the real terrorists. Canada Day bomb plot exposed. Just goes on and on. Proof Canada is importing terrorism. Edmonton attack exposed. Or this: breaking terrorist cell exposed as Canadian government operation. CSIS and the RCMP complicit in manufacturing terrorism. The Via Rail terror plot exposed. Canadian terror plot exposed as RCMP setup. Operation Smooth, the Canadian connection to global terrorism. Or this one, conditioning Canadians for the war on terror. Well, I really break down how it all works there. Bill C. S7 and the root causes of terrorism. Or Canada Day bombing foiled terror plot. Or CSIS setup. And it just goes on for pages and pages. But the point is, guys, I've been covering for this for quite some time, and I've exposed over the years exactly how this works. And now, fast forward to today, where, I don't know if you recall, a couple of years ago, there was these guys who were accused of alleging to kidnap a governor, two men accused of leading a plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, wanted to spark a second American Revolution by killing the governor of Michigan, prosecutors said on Monday, during closing arguments in the largest domestic terrorism trial in a generation. Well, this is a very, very big trial, and this is why it's important for me to cover this today, because we're going to look at what the lawyers of the accused are saying, which is that it has FBI fingerprints all over it. Surprise, surprise. Gretchen Whitmer kidnap plotters will blame the Bureau for pushing Pear into botched attack, as they were just bumbling weed smokers, their lawyers claim, ahead of closing arguments. So we're going to talk about all that, guys, and much, much more in today's video. But before we do, really quickly, I'd ask that you quickly just check me out at pressfortruth.ca/donate. If you do appreciate my efforts to bring you this info, here you can do PayPal, you can do Bitcoin, you can do other cryptocurrencies. You can join me on Subscribestar, which is a great Patreon alternative. I have been kicked off of Patreon. You could also sign up here for a monthly reoccurring contribution. Thank you to everybody who does contribute in that way. You can also send an e-transfer to dan@pressfortruth.ca, or you can always keep things old school by sending stuff to my P.O. box, guys. Links for all of this stuff are located in the description below. Once again, thank you so much to anybody who has taken the time to contribute to my efforts to bring you this information. All right, guys, I want to start with this. This is something I put out a few years ago, and it's really relevant to today's case, so I just wanted to bring you up to speed. What you're not being told about the new trial for the Via Rail foiled terror plot, and of course this is in relation to this video, in this case, I should say, that happened back in 2013. I put this out in June of 2013, Canadian foiled terror plot in the intelligence community. And then I followed it up with this one years later, where we see Canada has a terrorism problem whose roots are found deep within our own government. The Ontario Appeals Court has thrown out the convictions of 2 men sentenced to life over an alleged Al-Qaeda-linked plot to attack a Canadian passenger train. But before you get all angry at the courts demanding justice for a crime that wasn't committed, take a step back and look at the bigger picture and ask the question, qui bono, or who benefits? And indeed, I did ask those questions. And I discovered that the accused had been monitored for years by the FBI. And then I found out that there was an informant who in fact had contact and infiltrated the group. And this was back in 2013. The lawyers of the accused did a press scrum, and I was the only one who questioned him on the FBI's involvement and the undercovers and the informants who were setting them up, and he unbelievably revealed to me that he had no clue that this was even a thing. He said, quite frankly, I don't even know what you're talking about, essentially. No other media would dare ask these questions at the time. Let me just play that for you real quick. Here is the lawyer of the 2 accused in the huge so-called foiled terror plot on the Canadian rail, via rail trains. And here's where I asked their lawyers about the involvement of the FBI and the informants and the infiltration, and he admits to me he doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about. Check this out.
Accusations are very serious. What evidence there is to support that remains to be seen.
He was monitored for the last year. Was there any contact during that time, or were there any CSIS informants who infiltrated the group?
Once again, I have no comment on the evidence.
Can you tell us why the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are involved?
I can't comment on that, and frankly, I don't know.
Can you tell us why the FBI have been involved or are involved? Quite frankly, I don't know. And the reason why I wanted to show you that is because, again, this is almost 10 years ago now, but times have changed. These lawyers are starting to get with it. You know, I've been covering this sorts of stuff for, you know, decades, essentially, and it looks like these lawyers are starting to come around and realize how these things operate and how these guys are set up and coerced, and it's like their modus operandi over and over again. So here we see FBI fingerprints all over it. Let's take a look at this this article. The attorneys for 2 men charged with conspiring to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020 planned to blame the FBI in their closing remarks on Monday. Throughout the criminal trial, the government has portrayed Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr. as leaders of a wild plan to snatch Whitmer from her vacation home in Elk Rapids. Prosecutors claim Fox, Croft, and their allies were furious about COVID-19 restrictions and generally disgusted by government, prosecutors say, and wanted to send a message. And that's exactly what they do. They look for these individuals who are anti-government and maybe tending towards the area of saying things that sound like they could be potentially violent. They do this on purpose and specifically seek these people out. In fact, I'll tell you something that I came across over a decade ago now. I had a tip, some solid information, and I wanted to do an expose about this, and here's the gist of it. I started hearing from people in homeless shelters who were aware of PFT's work in Quebec and Montreal. Again, we're going back about a decade ago. That undercover CSIS agents were coming around to various homeless shelters and they were befriending mentally challenged individuals. Just think about that for a second to yourself. Why would undercover CSIS agents be going into homeless shelters trying to befriend mentally deranged individuals? This is something that I wanted to actually go undercover myself. and try to get a hidden camera and go into some homeless shelters in the area, but I felt at the time my face might have been a little too recognizable, especially by CSIS agents, potentially, for me to embark on such a mission. So I didn't go for it. But this is coming from a very, very solid source that I know this is indeed the case. And so anyways, the fact is they always go over and go after mentally deranged individuals, or just people who are incapable of really thinking themselves, and more importantly, who are highly impressionable and easy to mold and shape and manipulate into essentially doing their bidding. But defense attorneys for Fox and Croft said that they were bumbling, foul-mouthed, marijuana-smoking pair exercising free speech who are incapable of leading anything as extraordinary as an abduction of public official. And one other thing that has to be exposed when it comes to fake news, look at this headline, you know, they're just a bunch of bumbling weed smokers, it says. And here it says, you know, they're just bumbling, foul-mouthed, marijuana-smoking pair. And this, again, paints the false narrative that people who consume cannabis on a daily basis are not driven, not, people who, are successful and whatnot. And this is absolutely not the case. I know so many people who consume cannabis on a daily basis for medical reasons and other reasons who are highly driven, highly motivated, have, become successful, at various things, including myself. I would put myself into that camp, of one of those who I think are being misrepresented here in the news. Anyways, slight digression, but let's get back into it. Instead, the defense attorney says that FBI agents and informants fed their outrage and pulled them into their web. This has FBI fingerprints all over it, Christopher Gibbons said. The remarks come after a man who originally charged in the plot, Brandon Caserta, asserted, if the government wasn't involved in this situation, it would have never gotten to where it is now. And that's exactly how these things go. You guys may recall my coverage of the now infamous Toronto 18, who I exposed the fact that it was infiltrated by an undercover CSIS agent who shaped and manipulated and molded these young impressionable minds into getting to the point of, well, they didn't even do anything, but getting to the point where they could present evidence to a judge that would suggest that these young men wanted to commit these acts of violence. I showed and exposed it was all set up by an undercover CSIS informant. And now it's in the minds of the masses here in Canada, if a terrorist attack were to happen someday in the near future, it would automatically, people would just think these extremist terrorists would be where they go, because we've been conditioned to believe that that is the case. Meanwhile, I'm here to tell you it's the criminal elements within the intelligence communities who are the ones that we need to point the finger of blame on and really investigate into these matters, because as I've done time and time again and proven time and time again, they are the ones more often than not behind these things. The remarks come, here, people say things that are offensive and, may sound violent, but there's a difference between actually physically doing violence or just being around a group of people and talking blank. Caserta was found not guilty of the plot last year, and I will include a link to all of this stuff in the description below, guys, so you can check it all out for yourself. But here at the end, it goes on to say that ahead of the closing arguments this week, U.S. District Judge Robert Jonker told jurors the two men could be found guilty of conspiracy if the jurors believe there was a mutual understanding to commit a kidnapping, even if one wasn't carried out. But entrapment could apply if the jury believes that agents and informants persuaded Fox and Croft to commit a crime that they weren't willing to do before engaging them, the judge said. And I think this will, if justice is served correctly, we will find out that these men were being shaped and molded and manipulated into carrying out something that they never would have even dreamed of doing themselves in the first place, had it have not been for these FBI informants who infiltrate the group. Guys, in closing here, I want to leave you with With this video I put out a couple of years ago, declassified FBI document warns conspiracy theories are a new domestic terrorism threat. The FBI identified, quote, fringe conspiracy theories as a domestic terrorist threat, which they plan to deal with accordingly. In a newly declassified document, the FBI claims that conspiracy theorists who spread their views online are creating violent actors and domestic terrorists who are ideologically driven to cause harm to others. In this video, Dan Dix of Press for Truth goes through every page of this declassified FBI document, showing how on the surface it appears to be targeting real violent extremists, but in reality it serves as an excuse for them to shut down any opposing viewpoint that contradicts their agenda for an eventual new world order. And that's what it all comes down to, ladies and gentlemen. I will put a link to that video in the description below so you can check out all of that and all of this other coverage that I've not only done over the years about these foiled terror plots coming at the hands of the criminal elements within the intelligence communities, but also the fact that that is looking to be the case with these two who are currently on trial. So we'll continue to follow this one as it develops. Just wanted to bring all of that to your attention, guys. Once again, don't forget to check me out here, pressfortruth.ca/donate, if you do appreciate my efforts to bring you this info. Once again, links are going to be located in the description below. I want to thank everybody who has taken the time to support my efforts here over the years to counter all of this nonsense and propaganda that we're constantly bombarded with by the mainstream. So if that's something you appreciate, once again, click that thumbs up button, share this video with your friends and family who you think need to see it the most, and stay tuned, my friends. We're going to have more video reports coming very soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.